Welcome to the Spike Camp podcast. Spike Camp is a free online community for hunters that support conservation. It's a great place to share stories and your experience with other hunters. As a member of Spike Camp, you get access to all of our hunting live streams, discussion channels, contests, hunter resources, and events that we host. Membership to Spike Camp is free. Our only ask is that you are a member of a hunting or conservation group before you register. Head over to spikecamp.com to join us. This episode of the Spike Camp podcast is brought to you in part by Precision Optics. Omer and his team are the ones to trust when it comes to mountain hunting gear, guns, and optics. Precision Optics is a major supporter of conservation, and we are proud to partner with them. Head over to precisionoptics.net and tell them that Spike Camp sent you.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the final episode of the 2024 Elk Camp series. I just want to take a quick second to thank our sponsors for donating some awesome prizes. Both of these companies are BC based, and we're really proud to partner with them and try to help showcase them, and they're helping support the Spike Camp initiative and our members. So first off, we have a Dale & Company bino harness system with a cell phone and rangefinder pouch. Really cool. It's an enclosed system, so it keeps all your devices clean. Probably dry, I would assume. Looking forward to playing around with it. I'm gonna give them a ring here and see if I can get another one. I'm gonna give the one that's sitting on my desk here away tonight. And then our good friend Alec from Ape Equipment has once again stepped up with another pair of handmade custom fitted gaiters. And these things are awesome. We're real excited to have him on as a partner with us too. So we're gonna draw the winners of these prizes at the end of tonight's show. So super excited. Tonight's our buddy Dylan Eyers from EatWild. I'm sure everybody knows EatWild. He's been around for a long time and has a great platform. And one of the cool things that I really like about what Dylan does, he shares and believes in a lot of the same things that Blake and I do with Spike Camp: inclusion, education, conservation, just to name a few. There's a lot more things behind the scenes with EatWild, but those are the things that really strike a commonality between our two platforms. So, Dylan, buddy, welcome back to Spike Camp. Thanks for doing this.
Yeah, cool. Good to hang out with you. And thanks for having me on. I'm excited. I'm all fired up because I just finished packing for elk hunting. I literally just dropped my trailer off at my buddy's place. I locked it up, and I'm ready to roll. So good timing to get into a bit of a chat about kind of thinking about hunting elk early season and everything that's going into it. So good timing.
Yeah, it's cool. This is show number 3, and we had last week we had Mike Bridger on, and I know you guys are good buddies too. And oh man, I was so fired up. I couldn't sleep for 2 nights. I had to travel on business, and I was tempted to take an elk read with me, but I think probably wouldn't have done so well on the Air Canada flights, but I'm going to do it one of these days. So.
Cool.
We'll
did he share some of his footage, his wallow footage?
He sprinkled some in, a little bit. I think there's some on social media, but I mean, Mike's it's next level, right? With the cameras and stuff. I mean, it really is just, it was a great episode. We've had a lot of good feedback on it so far.
Right on. Yeah, we'll be listening to that on the way up to Elk Camp for sure. We're saving it actually.
Oh, cool. I got a couple questions for you before we get knee deep into the elk hunting thing. And I think I may have heard this on one of your shows before, but maybe you could recap for our audience how long you've been elk hunting and how you got into it.
So I actually came to elk hunting relatively late in my hunting journey. I started out as a kid. My dad brought me to whitetail camp with a bunch of really dedicated whitetail hunters, and that was like 10 years old, 11 years old, 12 years old. I think I killed my first whitetail when I was 12. It took a few years to kind of start figuring it out, and I just fell in love with sneaking around the woods. And these guys were all like still hunters. They actually, the crew that we hunted with were blacktail hunters from Vancouver Island, and if you sneak around the woods, grew up sneaking around the woods Vancouver Island killing blacktails, you can probably transition those skills to hunting whitetails if you can find forest to hunt whitetails in that you can sneak around in. So that's my start. And then I grew up in a moose hunting family. So, we hunted moose and called moose. And then, of course, when I was like in my, late teenage years and in my 20s, I discovered backpack hunting. I had a couple of mountaineer friends that were into mountaineering, and we kind of combined that with my passion for hunting, and we were got into mule deer hunting. And then a buddy of mine, Jeff Horsfield, is one of my mentors here. Is an older guy, but some of his hunting partners kind of aged out, and he's like, "Hey, I'm gonna take you to this spot. I'm gonna take you elk hunting." And I didn't really know what I was getting into, but it's like the ultimate hunt. It brings together all three of the things that I loved about each of those hunts, like the calling factor of moose, the mountain hunting of mule deer hunting, and then the sneaking in the woods and getting close and making the right steps and being kind of invisible in the woods, from the still hunting from whitetails. It brings it all together in elk hunting. And so when I started elk hunting when I was probably 25, that was it. I was hooked. It was the one thing that just been driving me ever since. And I don't think I've had an elk season off. And it's been 25 years now. So it's I love it. So it probably started when I was 25 and been hunting lots ever since. So
it's definitely an addiction, and I like your comparison to the other facets like the blacktail and stuff, because you're dead right. I mean, you combine all of those skills together, and elk hunting, you need them all. You need to be good at all of those things, or you need to be really lucky. One of the two, right? And that doesn't fill the freezer every year, as we know. So that's awesome. So you and I chatted a little bit about what we wanted to talk about tonight, and that was early season hunting. And I know you're a big fan of that, getting out there right out of the gate. Maybe unpack that for us a little bit, and then I'll let you lead into what you got in store for us for a presentation.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. It's funny. I'll share one story before I jump into my presentation about being lucky. So so Jeff brings me up to his elk spot, and it's my first hunt elk hunting. And he says, go down along the river there, and if you walk, there'll be elk sign on the river banks, and then there's a patch of forest that if you sneak through there, find a spot and try calling, and there's elk there, so that might work out. So I beeline it to the river, and I get to the riverbank, and I'm walking up to the riverbank, and sure enough, there's an elk with its head down, eating in a bush. I've been elk hunting for about 14 minutes at this point, and I could see, it's a bull. It's got antlers, and I'm looking at the back of the antlers, and there's just sort of that distinct sort of 3 points coming off the top of the.
Sure.
You can see what do you call it, the crown tine or whatever, and then 2 behind it. And it's like, there's 3 points. I wonder if there's 6 points on there. And so I'm like, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, it's a 6th one. I should probably shoot it. And sure enough, as soon as I had that thought, it kind of it just evaporated and it disappeared. Anyways, that's getting lucky, eh? And then
that was your like angel in the wings that said, "Dude, you're now hooked to elk hunting."
Yeah, well, 10 days later, I killed an elk 10 days later, but it was after like trials and tribulations, and you have to see a certain amount of elk before you can feel comfortable pulling the trigger. Like you just don't. I mean, you don't get it. Just counting points is such a big part of it, especially if you're in the 6-point season. That's a huge part of it, and I talk about that a lot. I've got for folks here, like I've got an online course that I put together with. I guess you would have hung out with Mike Bridger if you folks were here last week. You would have been listening to Mike Bridger talk about elk hunting, who is, like, in my opinion, the authority on communicating with elk in British Columbia. And he's also a friend of mine, and we talk hunting all the time. And if I get fired up about hunting, I call Mike, and anyways, I talked him into joining me on the EatWild online learning platform, and we built an online hunting course for BC residents, folks like you that are looking to kind of figure out when to go hunting and what part of when and where to go hunting in BC, what the pros and cons are. So I'll refer to that a little bit, and I'll be pulling here from that presentation a little bit for you folks as we're talking about early season hunting. But to be honest, that whole course was built around a deep dive and conversation with Mike, and between the two of us sharing everything we can in that process. So for $40, you're going to get a head start on your elk hunting. But I'll switch awesome. Over. Yeah, I'll pull this up and see if this works.
Okay.
Okay, I want to try a window right over here. There's one there. How about that? Do you folks see a presentation at your end?
We sure do. Yeah.
Right. So we got view on an elk. Now,
yep.
First question is that Chuck? Is that a legal elk? Would you shoot it?
Well, I got bad eyes, so it doesn't look legal from my bad eyes at this point. But
oh, you see that?
I'm going to call him closer.
Pointing down towards his butt there. That's
okay.
Good to me.
Yeah.
But you can't count on that. You got to be able to see all 6 points, not just the one that tells you it's probably a 6 point, right? So
I think I'm going to cow call now and just get him a little closer. Is probably what I would do.
Yeah, totally. Right on. Okay, well, I've got a few things for you folks, and thanks for joining, and thanks for being on here. And if you don't know me, I'm Dylan from EatWild, and I've been building courses and events and workshops and trying to build community around hunting and trying to make it more accessible and just a friendlier place where people can come and learn, and anybody is welcome to come and learn how to hunt with EatWild in our community, and we want to create a place for everyone to come. So hope that resonates with you, and along the way we built lots of relationships, and it's been great meeting Chuck and Blake along here on the way, and been very lucky. And so here I'll talk about elk hunting and early season elk hunting. So let's see. Here we go. So a couple of things that really the timing of the elk rut is critical to when you go hunting. And I'll walk through a couple of those things that are important to think about. About August 28th, bull elk will start to bugle. There's just enough testosterone built up inside their bodies that they start to produce the bugling sound. Now, I do know that elk can bugle year round, but that point where they start to get curious and they start to build up, because of testosterone, they get more active, they get more vocal, and when they start to call, they start to get in this cycle of checking each other out. And we call this the pre-rut period, from when they first start bugling to when they start to gather cows up. I call that the first week of elk hunting, which is September 1st or to the 5th or so. And they're vocalizing, but they haven't yet established their harems or their herds of cows, and they're covering a lot of ground, and they're actually quite vocal, and they're responding to each other. So that's the pre-rut period. And we're going to talk specifically about that, I think, in this presentation, and that's kind of what we're going for during this hunt. From September 5th to about the 15th, they start to establish their harems, and they're drawing in cows. And the complexity with hunting elk with cows is that there's two things going on that make it harder for you to hunt them. One is that they don't want to leave their cows, so they're not going to spring off their cows and come charging down to you necessarily because they hear a bugle. They may come down to you if they hear a cow call, because they want to grab you and have you join their herd or their harem. But in general, they get progressively trickier to call as you get further into the rut, because they'd much rather hang on to their cows than they are to come and break away and check out whatever you're doing. The other complexity of once you start to hunt a bull elk, once he's in a herd, is that he will have the benefit of all the eyes that come with a harem, or a herd. There'll be, if he's got 10 cows of them, now there's 20 sets of eyes, 20 eyeballs, sorry, I should say, looking around, pointing in every direction, getting in the way. What I have found is it's really easy to find the herd with a herd bull, bugle it away, but to get out close and get to them, there's just that herd is constantly in the way, and you're actually hunting the herd and trying to get manage, those cows that are going to be basically between you and the bull at any point in time, and make it difficult for you to get close. So, yeah.
Hey, Dylan, just jumping in here, a quick question. So typically you're hunting the sort of northern BC is where you go, and it's 6 points.
That's a little specific, wouldn't you say, Chuck? That's a little specific.
Well, it's north of Vancouver. Let's go with
I
that.
can go with that. Yeah. I mean,
do you think is there any evidence that indicates maybe that that range of dates, and this is a range, of course, does it change a little depending? Because I know in the moose rut it does, right? Like some areas of the moose rut start at different times throughout September, leading into October. Do you think there's much of a difference, say Kootenays versus Peace Country or further north?
Well, so there's the actual estrus period, like the time that the cows get bred by the bull elk, I think is the same whether you're in northern BC or southern BC. Mm-hmm. Now, the difference you're always dealing with is weather when it comes to hunting, and there's peak activity associated with the estrus period, but there's also peak activity associated with temperatures, and I think moon phases as well. For one reason or another, there's a moon phases can really bugger you up a lot too. So, I think in any given year, like I live on the Sunshine Coast, the elk will start bugling right now. Like I'll be up on the hill just wandering around checking cameras. I'll hear elk bugling, and they don't really bugle nearly as much, these Rougeauxbuff elk that we get, but you occasionally hear a little whistle in the woods. Mm-hmm. If you're near them, you hear them talking to each other. And for sure, when I've been in the Kootenays and in Jasper, that country, like you'll hear late summer bugling for sure.
Right.
But I think it's probably more a response to, well, the other big thing that you're factoring in here is hunting pressure too. And I think one of the big benefits of hunting early is that you're likely dealing with less pressure. And mm-hmm. the other thing you're likely dealing with is there's probably a few more six-point bulls around that aren't dead yet. Because
true,
I'm going to, like, where we hunt, there is usually 1 6-point bull elk on each of the hills that we hunt. And someone's going to kill that bull in the first couple of days of the season. Now, at some point, there will be another bull that's going to show up in the next 10 days or over the course of the rut. And it'll likely be a 6-point or a mature bull maybe. And so if you don't kill that elk on the first couple of days of the season, then you have to wait for the next one to come. So there's value mm-hmm. in being sort of first out of the gate and kind of say, because there's less pressure, you get a crack at that first bull. But I'll talk about that a little bit more, and I got a few slides
here. Perfect.
So just with respect to, the BC hunting seasons, is important to, there's also, when it comes to early season, there are opportunities that offer like a 3-point season. So, most of the places we hunt in BC, whether it's the Kootenays or, big parts of the north, there's a 6-point season. But parts of the Peace, there's a 3-point season. So 3 points or better, which can be a great opportunity. So last year we actually hunted the 3-point season, which was fun because you're just not as tied to, well, it's not as anxiety filled. Like every time you see a mature elk in a 6-point season, gosh, it's stressful. Like seeing that elk and wanting to go, oh gosh, can I get it together and be absolutely sure that's a 6-point bull elk and then try to kill it? Oh God, it's so stressful.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was fun. It was fun hunting this the 3-point season. We saw lots of elk. Like we didn't see any, like I didn't feel like we were going to kill a big one, but Jenny got a pretty nice one. She got a nice 5-point, mm-hmm. and that was awesome. So for me that's great, and I think we'll do more of that in the coming seasons. So mm-hmm. so just reflecting on those trip considerations for early season, that rut timing that we talked about, where you're earlier, I feel like is better if you want to try and hunt undisturbed bulls that are curious. And I'll probably talk about that strategy in the next series of slides, like how it actually rolls out hunting a pre-rut bull. Of course, weather is key. Like we just loaded a freezer into the back of the trailer because if we do kill something, we want to plug in somewhere and load. We do our best to cool the meat down, and eventually we'll probably just have to freeze it in order to make sure it gets home safe, right? that there's also just, if you can't run a freezer, then you really have to start thinking about solutions. We did I've got an online meat care course, which kind of goes into some options for managing meat in hot weather. We took an elk last year or 2 years ago now, and we basically took plastic bags and dry bags and we sunk it in the river. The river was like 5 degrees, and that helped us bring our temperature right down. So that was helpful. Good strategy.
Yeah, I mean, think last year when we had you on for the sheep camp series, we kind of dug into that a little bit with the bag system in the water, and it looks like a great system. We haven't tried it yet, but I know if you guys have, and it seems to work pretty good.
Yeah, the bucket we used buckets on. I don't know if I talked to you before or after, but we just bought these like really slick buckets off Uline. They're food safe buckets. They got a rubber seal, and the screw top, the lid screws down. So you can actually like stuff them full of meat essentially, and then just sink them in the lake for mountain hunts. And so we did that with our caribou last year, and we ended up sinking it, I think, for 8 days, and it was awesome.
Really? Wow. And that works good. And how many gallons would those buckets be?
I bought the biggest ones I could get. They're a little bit bigger than a 5-gallon bucket, so I guess they're about a 6-gallon bucket.
Oh yeah, cool.
But yeah, they're yeah. Anyways, I mean, I wouldn't guarantee it. I wouldn't guarantee it, but it was certainly better than letting it lay out on the rocks and get pecked at by birds and attract grizzly bears and heat up in the sun when you're waiting for an airplane that wasn't coming.
Yeah, for
right?
sure.
So, but yeah, it was good. It's good, but. I'm more confident with rivers because rivers are always flowing and they're always cold and stuff. So we've done that with bear meat a couple times too, just like throw it, in a plastic sealed bag and then into the creek. So it works good. Gets you home anyways. Gets the cool out, and if you can throw it in a cooler after, you're good.
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
So hunting pressure is a big deal. Like if you've ever hunted elk, like the thing that I would say to anybody who's like, oh, I want to go try and get an elk, I'm like, just do whatever you can to get away from hunting pressure, because it just screws up the whole thing. Because for one thing, elk get smartened up right away when there's people in the woods. But if there's no people in the woods, and if you can find a place that you can hunt elk without other people, then you're going to have a way more interesting experience, because you're just hunting the elk then. Like all the variables are about you, the country, the weather, all those factors we already talked about just briefly. And then it's just you and the elk and those factors that are somewhat outside of your control. Weather, light, all the rut timing. But there's nothing worse than having to manage for hunting pressure. Other people showing up, bugling, getting their scent covered off over the hill, just getting in the way, or you're having a good interaction with the bull and you're drawing them in, and all of a sudden they start bugling over top of you and start drawing the animal over. Like the worst hunting experiences I've had is when people have just been either obliviously or intentionally like screwing up your hunt. And it just sucks, because not only like now you're just competing against other people, and that sucks. I don't want to compete. I want to have a pure experience. I want to have a pure connection with those animals, and I want to have a good hunt. And if I can steer away from people 100%, we'll do that every time. And it also makes for a better hunt, because the animals are more responsive. They're more likely to come in, and you can. Then it's between you and the animal. And if you screw it up, great, you screwed up. But it sucks when you leave a hunt and going, hey, that dude made a really poor decision and screwed up our hunt. It doesn't feel good. So I would say, like, avoid pressure if you can. And ways of avoiding pressure, like we're packing in, we're using pack rafts on this trip. That's a way to get away from people. I know that, Mike Bridger, I don't know how much he told you guys, but I know what he just hunts really tough places that, like, you'd look at and you go, like, I would never go there. That looks awful. How would you ever kill an elk there? Because it's so thick and shitty. And that's his way of avoiding pressure. People go with jet boats and fly in, all those things. But the one thing you can always do that'll always get you away from people is hike. But just don't hike too far, because you still got to pack that animal out, right?
Yeah, exactly. Or at least recognize that you're going to have to pack it out and have people and resources and stuff. And the thing is, too, like you touched on a little bit, Dylan, and this is what we found. It doesn't take a lot of human activity to educate elk in the rut to what's happening, right? Pretty soon, it doesn't take much. One one day full of hoochie mamas and shitty bugles coming from four corners, and they're smart.
That sounds like my hunting strategy right there.
Well, your hunt strategy works.
Well, that's the thing, because if you hunt with a hoochie mama, which I do, I love a hoochie mama because it gives me a consistent call every time, and
Sure.
it's more important for me to have a hoochie mama consistent call than it is for me to have a overly salivated up elk call in my mouth that I end up blowing out the call right as the elk is like about to turn and come towards me, right?
Sure.
That's for a different conversation.
Yeah.
Hey Chuck, are you monitoring those questions? I see a couple coming in, but I can't focus on both at the same time. But
yeah, Blake will jump in on them. He'll periodically interrupt us and grab them, so you don't need to worry about them.
Yeah, so folks, I can't see you like nodding and laughing at my funny jokes or anything like that. So I'm just looking at my screens, but I do encourage you to drop a question in, and then Blake will ask me the question as we go. So please do jump in. I got a few slides for you. I'm gonna quit here right around 7:50. I do, and then we'll have 10 minutes for questions towards the end, and then I gotta go and make dinner, and I've got some folks coming for dinner that I'm gonna whip up.
Sounds good, Dylan.
For.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I'd like to talk a little bit about my elk hunting strategy in that early season period. And one of the things that I first do is locate elk. And there's a couple of different ways of doing that. Like we will spend a fair bit of time spotting early season because they haven't been pressured yet, and they might still be in the open, like hanging out in the open riverbanks, hanging out in the fields, hanging out in the side hills or in the alpine. Because if they're not pressured, they're still out grazing. So spotting is a great way early season to see elk, and I think it's worth getting some elevation and glassing a fair bit a couple days before the season opens up or before you're going to really implement your hunt plan. With the benefit of that too is if you're glassing, you can also see if they're a 6-point bull elk, and where we hunt and where we target 6-point bulls is where we hunt. So we can see we can because we're glassing ahead, we can kind of measure up that bull. Like elk don't really move all that far; they're pretty predictable. So if you spot a 6-point bull elk on a hillside, if you don't have other hunting pressure that you're dealing with, like there's a pretty good chance you're going to at least get a crack at that bull, at least get to see it, get an opportunity to hunt it. Now, whether or not you pull it into an area that you can actually have a clear ethical shot at it, that's the hunt, right? And that's why we're there, is to try and make that happen. But I like to be able to see bulls ahead of time if you're in country that's conducive. And if you're hunting like a lot of places in the Coonies or slide paths or Okanagan and grasslands or up north in the mountains, it does offer spotting opportunities, and then you can invest the time, find your target bull, and then get into that area the next day or when it's reasonable, and then set up and make a plan for getting it. There's a few different ways of killing elk. For me, like I've probably killed 5 or 6 elk by just spot and stalking, just seeing where they are and sneaking up to where they are and getting in close and close enough and shooting them. And that's an effective technique early season because, like I said, they're out in the open, you can see them. A little bit of intercept. I know that a lot of folks who hunt early season in the Kootenays, where they're really patterned still, they haven't been disturbed. So those elk are going to go from their feeding ground back to their bedding areas, back to their feeding grounds. Those feeding grounds are often like low elevation fields, farmers' fields, and they're just going back and forth. And for folks early season, you can set up on a trail, and then you can just wait for them to pass through and get them. I think that's pretty common in the Kootenays, and a little less so probably, well, I'm sure as well in some of the that agriculture land up in the Peace Country, where they're fairly predictable coming and going, intercept kills. For me, like it's probably, if I find a bull or I know there's a bull there, my first choice would be to spot and stalk it, just because I'm going to try that first if it's in a position that I can get to it. But 90% of the time, I'm not going to be able to see it, and I'm going to go to try calling it in. So I guess my next slide is probably about calling it in. There's just a couple slides about locating, spotting elk. There's, I guess is on the left here, we're sitting on the riverbank looking at lots of country, not seeing elk. And eventually we did find some elk. This is not the greatest picture in the middle here, but that is a mature 6-point bull elk from a couple kilometers away. So that became our target bull for the hunt. Oh, there he goes. He's walking across. Can you hear any noise in that? Is it coming through?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, yeah, so we're just sitting here, and then this was great because it was inspiring because we actually floated the river, and for 4 or 5 days didn't see an elk, and then we went to a different spot and put our glass up and saw a 6-point bull walk across, which was handy. This was a spot and stalk elk where I just got to him. It was handy. This is probably this is another one. Yeah, this is the spot and stalk. Yeah, just chasing the herd and getting in front of them and intercepting them eventually. Okay, so calling systems. I talked a little bit about this. I think this is an important conversation for those of you who are maybe just starting out elk hunting. I'm very much my priority, maybe to my detriment, is to be a simple caller. Like setting myself up on working hard to get to places where elk aren't disturbed, and then having a very simple calling practice that elk have never heard before. So I don't have to be a good caller. I'm very limited in terms of my elk calling. I have I've never been able to be a very effective elk caller using the reeds. I get very ticklish, and I can't use the mouth reeds effectively without just it's hard on me. Chuck or Blake, are you guys reed callers? Are you effective?
Yeah, so I'm a reed caller. It took me a long time. I've been doing it now 10 plus years, but it was the first month or so of learning how to do it was the most frustrating thing I've ever been through in my life. And just stuck with it and was able to get to it. And in my opinion, I'm pretty good now. I'm certainly better than I was. Blake is learning how to do it, but I think he's more along the lines, the beginner level with the reeds, but he tries all the other external stuff and he's getting pretty good.
Yeah, I just bought that, the one that Mike uses, the Terminator with that blue lid on it or whatever. That thing, I was impressed. I was just playing with that the other day, and then I am also a Hoochie Mama guy as well. I've actually found to be really effective how I was using it, but yeah.
Nice. Yeah. I can rip a bugle off my reed, but it's just like the part is that I can do some good cow calls, and then when I want to be a good cow call, it's just like nothing. Like I've over salivated, or I'm just like my mouth gets nervous. I don't know what happens. Or I can rip a bugle. I just can't do it consistently. So I actually use the I see some people saying I love being hands-free. I absolutely love being hands-free too, but I also just want to be consistent with my approach, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
the cow calls, especially today, there's so many choices.
Yeah,
it's a bit of an expensive journey, right, to figure out which ones work for you. Like the Hoochie Mama's tried and true standard, and it's great. And I was teasing about the Hoochie Mama. I've been in the woods calling and heard 4 Hoochie Mamas around me, and it's like they're all the same. But no, they're simple though. Like you said, you're consistent. I think it's great.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think that's I mean, and then there's a whole bunch of these mouth reed calls that they all work. I mean, and it's funny. Like, I remember watching a Primos show one time. They're like, "No, there are some days that the elk only bite on one call, so you got to have 50 different calls to bite on." And but it's sort of true. Like, I've got a couple. I got this like one called the Hyper Hot Lips. That like sometimes that thing just like it just drives elk crazy, and they just fire right up. And Hoochie Mama doesn't work. The mouth reeds don't work, but. Anyways, elk bugle, again, kind of the same principle. Like, if you're starting out and you want consistency, the power bugle is by far the easiest, clearest sounding elk call that elk will respond to, provided they haven't been bugled out a ton. This other one, this power bugle, I think it's the other one, I can't remember. It's like a Rocky Mountain elk call. I think this one with the camouflage on the outside, it actually gives a really nice sound. I've actually really liked. I've had some good responses with it. It's got a different type style read on it. It works good. So early season, my plan is I'm actually not trying to get into a big tussle with an elk. If ideally I'm going to spot it from a ways away. That's plan A. Plan B would be to rip one bugle from distance and hear an elk call back. So, and then that locates the bugle. And I'm not going to keep bugle. Once I hear an elk bugle back, and I feel like it's likely a target bull or one I want to go after, I shut up. I'm not trying to bring it across the valley. My next step, once I've located a bull, is there's some elk calling, I guess. These high-tech presentations that I built and long forgot about. That's all like rut bugle, and that's not really what I'm doing when I'm in actually, let's just move past this. Oh, I'm gonna share this just because we have it. This is footage from Mike Bridger. Just to get you fired up for elk season, I shared this with all my hunting partners out of the trip. Yeah, this is just. So this is footage that Bridger gets every year from his series of cameras, and he shares it, with his friends in his Instagram community. So good.
Oh, it's awesome.
So these guys are in full rut. Like these folks are just like doing their thing.
Oh yeah. Look at this guy. Oh man.
Oh. Okay, take each other around. Actually, it's got the dates there up top, eh? A lot of these have got dates. So that's the 9th. They're just getting into the full season. So actually, there's actually quite a few there. Actually, just noticed like from August 31st is that last shot. So they are going. They're wallowing. They're calling. They're doing their things, and it's that early season. A lot of those shots. So yeah, super interesting. That's the third. Okay. All right.
Hey, Dylan, question for you. You said there that, once you get the bull located and he screams back at you, you go silent. Do you implement raking into your routine?
No, I don't. I only would do that if I'm like well along in my process. So I think, yeah, I wouldn't do that until like my first objective will always be to locate a bull, and then probably it's going to be 2-3 kilometers away, maybe, or a couple kilometers or 500 meters. It doesn't really matter. I'm going to then move in on that bull into a location that I think I can kill it. And when I say I think I can kill it, it means I'm going to go to a spot that has enough cover for me to stay covered up, that the elk will be comfortable moving through, but will still offer me enough looks that I can potentially shoot the elk within, at 60 yards or 80 yards. So I won't start bugling back at it and trying to draw it to me unless I'm in that spot. Like unless I'm in a good spot, and I'm like, okay, that elk is only 200 meters away. I'm in a really good spot. Maybe it'll come to me. Then I'll hang in there and I'll keep calling and try to draw it in. I won't really include raking or anything else, because really I'm going to start with cow calling, especially early season. I'm going to locate that bull, hopefully 2 kilometers away. I'm going to walk over to where I think a pretty good looking, cow elk is going to be hanging around. I'm going to pretend to be that cow elk. I'm going to cow call a few times, and then just be as sultry as I can and try and draw that bull elk like out of his comfort zone, just down the ridge a little bit into that cow zone. And that's plan A. Every time that's plan A. Like a couple cow calls close by, see if he'll just drop off of his little ridge into a spot that I can kill him, and then that's plan A every time.
Do you find they come in silent quite a bit when you do this approach?
100%. Yeah. So probably I'd say that, I can say, I think Yeah, they're very, very well. Like they don't know. They'll come in silent. You can hear them coming in though. You can hear them walking. I think last year we were hunting in an area that probably had seen some pressure. I think all 5 bulls that I called in over the course of 4 or 5 days of hunting that got in on me came in quiet. I didn't hear one come in. I only heard a couple bugles, but we were in elk the whole time. So they'll just shut up once they feel any pressure. So, but they will still come in and they'll still be curious, right? So I would say, be quiet. I mean, I think the biggest downfall of all of us as elk hunters is we call too much. We just get fired up. We want to, we have this we see too much elk, hunting TV where elk are thrashing and beating up on stuff and beating on each other. And we just want to get, them all fired up so they act super stupid and come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that, I've seen that. I've had that happen a handful of times. And generally when I get an elk that's really fired up and really screaming and doing all those things and smashing bush, I never see them. They're just 20 meters from me doing all this. I can't see them because they just seem to, when they hold cows and when they're comfortable and when they're fired up, they're going to be in the shittiest, ugliest spot. And they're not going to leave it to try and, come out to where they can get shot. They know, right? So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of merit to your approach on that early season. Like you talk about, the patterns of the elk, right? They're looking for cows. And, if I was a bull elk and I heard a cow calling, I'm not going to scream my head off as I'm running down to find that cow because every other bull is going to hear me and they'll all do the same. And if you're the bull, you're hoping no one else heard her, right? That's probably what they're thinking.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that to me is for early season undisturbed animals. Cow elk will just be squeaking away in the woods, feeding, hanging out, and if you can replicate that, then great. I got a few notes here about just general rules for calling elk. Always locate that legal bull. Always have a plan. I think that's for me. I always have a plan. I generally know the topography and the little patches of country that elk are comfortable coming in. One of the mistakes that I made a lot early on in my elk days was you obviously you want to call an elk into somewhere you can see it, but elk won't come wandering out into an open field in response to a call. They won't feel comfortable. They don't have cover. They don't have escape terrain. They're not going to come absolutely there's video of it happening, I'm sure. But if you call elk into thick bush, they will come. If you call elk into open fields, they will not come. So you got to find that balance between somewhere that's open enough that you can get them to come into and close, and then also thick enough that they feel comfortable. The other reality is that elk, the majority of elk are going to be in that thick, shitty, elk loving country. And it's way more convincing to an elk to go, yeah, that's most likely, where that cow is coming from is the thick bottom of the valley, thick, blow downy spot that's going to be hard to get in and out of, but it's going to be comfortable for an elk to be in. So I always keep that in mind. Elk got lots of eyes, so keep concealed there. And the other thing is when you're calling for an elk and you're trying to get it to come into you, whether you're a cow or a bull, those elk are going to sneak in and they're going to be looking for you. They want to size you up. But if you're a bull call, they're going to size you because they don't get their ass kicked. They want to see who you are. So they're going to look and look and look, and they're way better at looking through bush than you are. Then they're going to look for you. They're going to see you. And if you're moving around talking to your buddy, they're going to see you, and that's just going to trigger that level of alarm that they're just not going to continue to come in. So you got to stay concealed. I do use camouflage for this stuff. I often will build a blind. I have a little makeshift blind material that I bring with me to just really conceal myself. But usually I just use natural cover and use trees and such, and it works pretty good.
Hey, sorry, Dylan, have you played with decoys? Bridger had a pretty cool decoy on our show last week that he uses, and I actually ordered one. Do you ever play with them?
You know what? I find that I find it's better just to you'll notice that elk really like thick cover, and a lot of places where there's elk, you can't see them. Then you can hear them or you can see them walking through, but they're not really making themselves available to be seen. So I sort of gravitated to hunting thicker stuff over the years, or the edges of thicker stuff, where the having that sort of decoy standing out in the open isn't really something that I've factored in on. But I think I bring him our decoy on this hunt, and I'm going to play with it a little bit, because we did use it kind of back early days of hunting, when we'd sort of stick it out there in the open and hope the elk would come storming out and, you know, check them out. But it never really worked. The only time I've really used it is for when I wanted to move, and I've used the decoy as cover for moving, which has helped just to get into a better shooting position. So I'm less up. So instead of me walking across that one little opening to where I'm going to get into a better position, I'm using the elk as my cover to go across. Done that a few times. So I think there's a place for it. I'd love to play with it more. I hunted with Adam Foss a couple of years ago, and he's a bow hunter. And it was funny because I've never really thought about hunting elk or calling elk in like closer than 100 yards, because if I could get them to 100 yards, they're probably going to be dead, or 60 yards, they're probably be dead. Whereas he doesn't even think about elk hunting until they get to 60 yards away, and now he's got to think about how he's going to get them to 30 yards as a bow hunter. So of course, his whole repertoire, his calling systems, his decoy system, his thoughts on camouflage are entirely different than a rifle hunter, because I just have to be a half-ass good elk hunter to get them to 100 yards. If you want to be really good, you got to get them to 30 yards. And I never had to think about that because they were dead by then, right? So
yes, exactly. The rifle is the equalizer, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, totally. Sure. So absolutely cool. Okay, I'm not going to pound through a couple more slides here and then let you guys go. As you can see, my dinner guests have just arrived.
Sure.
So I've been super nervous because I'm making dinner for. I live in Secret Cove, and there's this like amazing Italian restaurant that opened up below us here in the Cove, and it's anyways, so he's coming over for dinner tonight because they're off tonight. So one night we can have him over, and but yeah, cooking for one of Vancouver's best chefs tonight. So I'm feeling
there you go.
Yeah, but hey, anything for you guys, right? I could be prepping for dinner and my anxiety instead I'm talking elk, which I'm also fired up about.
Right on.
Okay, so let's talk about calling in a bull just quickly here. Elk have that 100-meter safety zone, and I think you've seen this with mule deer. They're pretty comfortable, or like within 100 meters of, like they'll run away 100 meters and then stop. Like a lot of ungulates are kind of comfortable within 100 meters of humans, and if you breach that zone, they get uncomfortable. So that's like, it's a little easier to call an elk within 100 meters, but then at some point they won't come in any closer until they've verified that they're comfortable stepping beyond that. So a lot of places where I hunt, like, you got to be in country that's thick enough that they need to actually get closer to you to breach that 100-meter zone to get a little bit closer. And that's really where we start to use two people, because we'll often have a caller sort of set up a little bit further back, because we know we'll get the elk into 120, but they'll be comfortable coming to 120, but then crossing that line closer, they get uncomfortable. That's where you can have a second shooter sort of set up, sort of halfway between you, or you anticipate the elk coming in, and then they're within that 60-yard range where they can hopefully see it in that thicker stuff. What do you do if a bullet gets hung up? Well, that's kind of my starting point, is using that cow call system, and that gets them started. And then, if I can get them in, great. I can see them, I can shoot them, or if I can have them swing in front of my shooter hunting partner, then I've got them. But if they get hung up, that's when I start to I'm patient. Number one, just keep waiting. Like, if they're still there and you can hear them, just keep waiting. Like, they're curious. They want to know what's going on, and they're just waiting to generally figure out if things are dangerous for them. And if you outwait them, they'll often just come in. And our biggest, as elk hunters, our biggest fault is our impatience. So the more patient you are, honestly, the best way to kill an elk is to just go sit somewhere with a cow call and sit there for 5 days until an elk presents itself and you can shoot it. Honestly, that's the best way to kill an elk.
That's a good point. It's a good point.
When we make it way more complicated ourselves, we move around a ton, and we move our scent around, and we bugle, and then we get all excited that he's gonna come fight me now, so I'm gonna bugle more and bugle louder and rake trees and stomp on the ground, and all that stuff. Every time you do anything, the first thing an elk is gonna go is is that safe? That's have a mantra that I use in my head when I'm elk hunting or deer hunting, any hunt. I was like an elk, a deer, a moose, they spend every moment of their life trying to survive. And they're way better at this than you. So like never underestimate the desire for a deer or an elk or a moose to live another day. And they will make every decision based on that desire to live another day and be super cautious. And if you underestimate like, you know, how well they see or how well they smell, or that, oh, they're just like, maybe I can just get away with it. Like maybe I can get away with like throwing my wind across the hill, or maybe I can get away with this noise or this, or just being exposed. Like you can't, because that's all they do all day long is try to avoid getting killed and looking for you. So if you underestimate them, then you're basically giving up, and that's just every time. So I should probably get going here, but so a couple things here, like, you know, stalking in on a bull, that's where you can kind of move to still hunting techniques, and you want to stay downwind of the animal. The one thing you can do with elk, they make a lot of noise because they're often with a herd, so you can actually move quite a bit more noise. Like you can be noisier than you would think, whereas an elk, like deer and stuff, they're way more responsive to noise, and you can't quite get sneaking in on them. But elk are pretty, like, you can get in on them, but if you're exposed, like they see your silhouette, they'll trigger on that. So I've walked pretty close into elk, just staying thick and covered up. So yeah. And then one thing that I'll leave on this, I'll take a couple questions before I bow out of here, but never be afraid to like bow out and come back. Like I think a lot of us think it's like we're pretty good about this, like, because we hunt in a low pressure area. Like if we got an elk going, he's just not coming in today, we'll just leave, and then we'll try it again the next day, and we'll go set him to the spot that we know elk like coming into, and we'll set up no cow call, and you know, it might be 3 or 4 days later that the elk will come in, and when he does, we get him. But there might be 3 or 4 days where they're just not responsive, they got something going on, they're not interested. That's another thing that's really interesting about elk hunting, is like you just never know when they're going to come in. Like you never know when they're going to fire up and be bugly. Like, you know, just there's some days that are bugle days, some days that aren't. You think it's going to be a big bugle day because it's cold and clear and all that shit overnight, and you get up in the morning and it's quiet, and then the next day it's windy and shitty and cold and rainy, and there's bugling everywhere, right? So it's just days when they're more active and days when they're not, and you kind of gotta, like, don't blow your hunt out if the elk aren't responding. Like the elk will respond if you know where they are. If you got a target bull, be patient. Just keep coming back, cow calling, see if they move, see if they come in. You know, at some point, if they're not responding to a cow call, you can try to use some subtle bugling, see if they respond to the bugle. If they get fired up, maybe they come in on the bugle. Yeah, you can play with it like that. I'm sure Bridger talked more about bugling than I would have, for sure, because I'm not a big bugler.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, he certainly dove into a bunch of different categories, and I think you're right. I think you also got to kind of play the mood of the elk, right? You've got to figure out what they're up to today, and like you said, if they're not calling today, and you're just walking around making noise, a lot of times you just make noise all day, and that's it. Come back next day, and the bulls are going nuts, right?
Mm-hmm. It's always surprising. Like I would not. This is a bull that came in. I just did not expect this elk to just came from 2 kilometers away, just charged right in.
Wow,
it's so fun. I think he comes right in.
It
Let's see
is.
this next shot here. It's kind of fun. This one's fun.
Hey, Dylan, while you're doing that, I have
Yeah.
a quick question for you.
Go for it.
I mean, for me, hunting elk is a journey, and we've been on it for years, and we're starting to, you know, get better at it every year, a little bit better. What's the biggest lesson learned, the most valuable lesson that you think you learned out in the elk woods?
You know, 100%, like creating opportunities to learn. You know, this is a great shot, but like this elk is 7 feet away from me. I still can't shoot it, really. Like, it's so thick that you can't, you know what I mean? Like that, but he's comfortable because he can't see me, right? So he's gonna get right in on me here, and like, you know, I can't get a shot on him because I'm sitting in a fir tree, right? But yeah, I think the biggest thing is like, well, the biggest learning I've ever had was like, you know, the tendency is you want to be in the open, you want to have bigger view corridors, you want to be able to see lots of country. Well, that doesn't work. because elk aren't comfortable when they're curious and coming in. They're not going to come in to open country where they can't see a herd of elk living there. If there's a big herd of elk living there in the middle of the field, absolutely, they'll come sauntering right in. It's safe. But if you're trying to sit in an open field or an open grove and you're calling and they're looking into it from 100 yards away, like, I'm not coming in there. I don't see any elk. That's number one. The other thing I learned is that if you're calling in really thick timber or thick brush, then you're also calling in grizzly bears. So be careful about that. That's a whole other story for another day, is calling in grizzly bears when you do this. So make sure you maintain good enough view corridors if you're in grizzly country that you can keep an eye on your back. They won't come in on you if they're downwind of you, though, because well, I shouldn't say that. They don't tend to. They smell you.
More often than not, yeah. More often than not, they won't.
Yeah,
let's hope.
Totally. Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So
that's probably the biggest lesson I've learned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did we want to grab a couple questions?
Yeah, grab a couple questions. There's quite a few that have come in. It's great to see there's lots of folks turned out. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. So Dylan, we got a couple quick ones here. So in reference to, you were talking about how you hunt harder to reach country.
Yeah.
Kelly had a question in terms of what's your opinion on how far is too far when you're talking like getting out of the sort of that hunter zone close to roads and stuff. Do you have any tips on that?
Yeah, great question. Well, if we hunt in a group of 4 people, it is probably like a solid 5 pack loads for an elk to get off a mountain. Maybe 6 if you're like want to do it with some, you're taking your gear off as well, like your guns and all the things you're coming off. So 6 pack loads. So and then if you're in good meat care conditions, say it's cold, you can hang a couple of meat quarters up at the kill site, and you can start packing out quarters. You can take all day if you want, but a lot of places we hunt early season, we got to have that animal out and down and into a meat locker or the freezer, or at least off the mountain out of the sun within 4 or 5 hours, right? So we typically hunt within 3 or 4 kilometers of road access, at maximum 4 kilometers. That's a lot. Like to pack an elk, that's hard. Because you're talking 100-pound pack loads, right? And even I'm not nearly as tough as I used to be, and that's a lot. So yeah, I would say, I remember watching the Mindful Hunter guy, and he was I don't know if you see his stuff, but I do appreciate his effort to share his journey with us. But he was hunting like 15 kilometers back in the elk woods by himself. I'm like, that's difficult. You can't do that. Like no matter how tough you are, the meat care situation would be difficult.
Exactly.
Like yeah. So I mean, as much as you can't separate that far.
So Blake and I last year, Blake and I, we got his bull about 6 kilometers from the truck, and it was in the bush, but it was not terribly. It wasn't very mountainous, so it was generally, a little bit of incline and decline. Now, we pulled the trigger right around noon.
Perfect.
And it took us, we got it out in 2 loads, so 2 trips with 2 of us.
Yeah.
And we got to the truck, I think our second load, I think I dumped my pack on the tailgate at 5 to 10 p.m. And it was hot. It was like, those days when it's high 20s, you pull the trigger, and by the time you get to the bull, there's already a swarm of insects on it.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. It's uncomfortable, right? Yeah.
It was a horrible day for packing. Yeah. And you talk about the weights, I'm 56, I'll be 57 in a couple of weeks. I got that, and it was fantastic. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do the exact same thing, but I hurt for 2 weeks after that trip.
Yeah, totally. No, absolutely. Yeah.
So
questions, Blake?
Yeah, there was another comment from Eric. He was referring to, you were saying that you shoot elk around 100 yards, and he had just a comment around what type of country you hunt in. I think maybe his question was answered by some of those video clips you were showing, because he was saying a lot of the area he hunts is really thick, like that underbrush is really thick. So getting 100-yard visibility to identify a bull, that's in a lot of cases pretty hard. It's got to be like that 40, 50-yard mark.
Yeah. Well, and to be honest, if I was going to go back in my brain here, and I've probably killed all of my elk under 100 yards and a handful at 300. So those spot and stock bulls, they're still out in the open. They haven't really decided they're really, rutting yet. The handful of elk, those have been at longer ranges maybe. But yes, like a lot of elk have been in bow range for sure. It's like stepping out, and yeah. So they mean, it's always about the country, and the thicker they're more comfortable coming in the thick stuff. It's just whether you can see them or not, right? So I think to answer your question about thickness, it's like I've progressively hunted thicker country as I'll tell one quick story, and I gotta go, but
sure,
so
go for it.
We were back in camp, and we looked back up on the elk hill, and there's this elk screaming at like 3 p.m. or something like that, right on top of one of the little knobs behind the camp. And we could see him, and it was just far enough away that we couldn't quite tell if he was a 6-point or not. We could tell he was a mature bull. So we were like, well, shit, we still have enough light. We could go check that out. So I was hunting with my buddy Graham, and he's a young, fit guy, and we run back up there, and it's about an hour and a half to get underneath this elk. And we're below him. We're thinking, okay, well, hopefully we can call him down to us, or at least call him out to the open from where he was calling, and then we can probably shoot him at 200 yards or something, we thought. So we start calling at him. Like we're actually on this slope that's super thick. But we're looking up at the open part here. Let me just turn off the screen sharing here. Stop sharing. So we're looking up at this slope where this elk is sitting on top, and he's just, and we're sitting down this shitty ass burned thick country. Like you can't barely see 5 feet in front of you, but we can see him up there. So if he comes out onto this open patch 200 yards away, we got him. So we start calling. We cow call a few times, and he just comes wandering out, and we can see now, oh, it's a 5-point. Big, beautiful, mature 5-point, not legal. Well, we've cow called a few times. Well, now we hear some bugling. We hear some bugling over here, some bugling over here, some bugling over here. We heard 6 different bugles around us.
Wow.
And so now we're like, oh, shit, that's pretty fun. Well, this guy starts bugling up top because he heard the cow calling, and he's bugling all these guys. So we just keep cow calling, and all of a sudden we start seeing elk coming in, and we see elk coming right in to the point that we're like a 5-point elk with his nose, and we're literally taking the rifle, poking his nose to try and chase him away from us, because that's the 5-point. We want to see the next elk that's coming in. We can hear other elk coming in.
Yeah.
So we hear all these elk come in. We don't see a legal bull. We end up actually seeing a legal bull poke its head out on the far side of the valley coming in towards us. So we're like, okay, there's a 6-point. There's our target bull for tomorrow. We'll go get him tomorrow, but we got to get out here now because we're running out of light, and we've got all these elk coming around us. Okay, exciting stuff. Wow. Did we ever learn something? We learned that if you hunt the thicker, the shittier stuff, these elk will come right in on top of you. Exciting stuff. So we bugger off back to camp. When we get back, and Jeff, our mentor, is there. We're like, oh my God, we just learned everything about elk hunting in one night. You just basically go to the thickest, shittiest spot, and you call elk, and they just come charging in, and you literally have to beat them off with the butt of your rifle when they come in. They're that close. We're like, holy shit, we learned something. All right. And up till now, we had been hunting these beautiful open, like wooded groves that seemed like the spots that we wanted to kill elk, and we would kill lots of elk. We just had to wait for the day that they would be comfortable enough coming in. But we thought we cracked the code. Anyway, next day, Graham and I go back to go get the 6-point elk. So we go set up, same thing, sitting down in this like super dense country. I'm sitting down on the bottom of the hill in the thick burn, like I know, 5-year-old burn, super dense shrubs, and I'm elk calling. Graham's going to push up a little bit, and he's going to intercept the bull when it comes off the mountain. And I'm reading my book because I can't see anything. I'm just like in total bush. I'm reading my book, cow calling, bugling once in a while, cow calling. And I can hear elk crashing in. Oh, there's an elk above me, and it's another young bull. I chase him away with my gun. And more crashing around me, no big deal. I'm just totally tuning it all out. Next thing I see Graham running down the elk trail towards me. And he's like, Chris, and just like blows right by me. And I'm like, gather up my shit, and I like go chasing after him. And we get to an open spot where we can see a little bit. He's like, holy shit. Like every time you cow called, grizzly bear just came charging towards you, and then would stop and listen, and you cow call again, and he'd come towards you again. I was like, okay. we might have figured out elk hunting, but we've also figured out grizzly bears here. So
Grizzly,
okay.
yeah.
So we got to check this.
Oh,
We can't go into 100% thick country. You got to stay in the sort of mixed country and go from there. But anyways,
wow.
yeah, be
That's
careful.
sketchy.
Honestly, with they will, grizzly bears will respond to those cow calls. They will come check you out. Maintain good view quarters. Find that balance. Yeah, and hope that sets you up. But cool.
Well, buddy,
bounce, guys.
I know you do. I just have one last question for you. It
Go
might
for
be
it.
the most important one of the whole night. What are you cooking tonight?
Oh man, okay. So like I'm feeling super insecure because it's like one of the best Italian pasta chefs, like I said, and so we're going to Thailand tonight. So we're gonna do a salmon tartare dish with some like fish sauce and lime. We're also gonna do a blacktail crudo with some, again, like the mint, herby, lime, fish sauce kind of thing, and then we're gonna do what we call waterfall salad. So we're gonna sear some loin and put that on a green salad, and then we're gonna finish with halibut prawn pad thai. So yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Well,
So.
you better get to it. So I just want to thank you again for squeezing in, this hour. So you're super busy. You got dinner guests. You're packing for elk. You got your own platform. You're running your own elk series. We're gonna post up all the links and stuff on our socials and on the platform here for your courses. And we'll let you go, buddy. We need to do an Africa podcast and just hang out for a while and just.
I'm looking forward to that. Yeah, so if folks want to follow along, we do a podcast series, which is fun and all about learning how to hunt. So if you haven't followed the EatWild podcast, find us there. I just actually did my last podcast. It was the first time I did a solo podcast. I just talked about my gear planning process, and I actually shared my gear list for my elk trip as well. So that's on my show notes, so you can check that out. Good one to find out. And then I think the one that Learn to Hunt Elk with Mike Bridger is about a 4-hour session, long format learning. If you want to learn how to hunt, that's a great place to start. And then still hunting, that's a good one too. I've got a e-course on still hunting, meat care as well. Also, being safe in bear country, so how not to get eaten by a grizzly bear, got that too. Yeah. So but yeah, follow along, and if you want to do one of our workshops, we do a 3-day how to hunt workshop a couple times a year in the Okanagan. We do a bow hunting workshop. We partner with Adam Foss. We do that once a year. So yeah, lots of fun stuff, and then we're always doing butchering workshops in Vancouver, and we'll do some wild game cooking workshops here in the winter just for fun. So cool.
And we have that. We also have that the one you did on here a few months ago on the adventure hunt planning. We're going to drop it on our podcast platform. We'll get it over to you, and you got that to put on yours as well. Might as well double up.
Thanks. Appreciate it. Awesome.
Okay, cool.
Okay, well, thanks for everything you guys do. And it's great to see the community growing. It's awesome. And look forward to keeping connected. And anytime you guys want to hang out, let's do it.
Cool. Thank you very much, Dylan.
Buddy.
Awesome. See you guys. Bye.
See you later.
All right, take care. All right. Hopefully everybody's hanging out here. We got a couple things we're going to go. Dylan's taking off. Good luck with that dinner, my friend.
Yeah, you bet. See you guys.
See you later. A couple of things. We got a couple of housekeeping things we're going to wrap up. Tonight we're going to draw some prizes. Also, just want to let you guys know there's going to be a bonus episode related to elk hunting coming the first week of October. And I know it sounds a little odd to have an elk episode in October, but this one actually will benefit a lot of you. I've got a buddy of mine on Vancouver Island who's he's retired, but he was a former Roosevelt elk guide for the northern Vancouver Island. I'm not going to spill too many details yet, but this gentleman, he held the world record Roosevelt elk under his own name for, I'm pretty sure it was world record or in the top 2 or 3. I'm going to make sure on that fact, but I think he was up there for like 10 years. And then he also, he guided 15 or 16 record book Roosevelts, ton of knowledge. And he's going to come on and we're going to tear apart Roosevelt hunting on the island. So I'll keep you posted. We're just getting in the scheduling phases on that. So make sure we'll pump that one up on socials too. So Blake, what do you want to do here? You want to give away some stuff or what?
Yeah. Why don't we do the Elk Camp prizes first? You can talk them through it, and then I'll just draw. I've got everybody that signed up and registered. I've got a big spreadsheet of everyone, so I'm just doing a random number draw and gonna pull some names out of it. So.
While you're doing that, I'll show you guys. We're going to start with the Dale and Company bino harness system. You can see it's enclosed. It's got a magnetic close on it. It's cool, neat features inside of these. They've got little pockets inside and on the back and on the sides. And then it's got MOLLE webbing all the way around the front and on the bottom. And he makes a few accessories. We'll have to pull up his links. I think you've got the links there, Blake, right?
Yeah, I'll post it in the chat here in a second.
Yeah. So there's a range finding pouch that he sent along. And there is a cell phone pocket as well, as you can see right there. It's good stuff. I really like it. I like the enclosed ones. I've tried some of the ultralight ones recently in the last couple of years, and my binos just become a mess. So we're going to draw that one.
Yep. So, all right. So we've got lucky number 10, the 10th registrant. That is Jeremiah Reed. So Jeremiah, congrats. I'll message you on the platform there. We'll get it shipped to you.
All right. And there's a bunch of you guys probably already have these, but these are the Ape Gators from Ape Equipment, the Silverbacks. Alex only doing, I don't know if he started it now, but he's only doing custom fit gators now. You can't just order them size to fit. A couple cool features on these too. I'm not Jay Nichols, so I'm not doing crazy reviews, but it's all, he's got a really good Velcro system with the strap that goes under your boot. I don't know what he called, but this is super solid. This rubber on this is super thick. Everything about these gators is just bulletproof. So I love mine, and you're going to love these ones. So let's give those away.
Okay. So lucky number, where did it go here? Lucky number 101. So that is Sardera Duga. I think that is a new member. He joined for Elk Camp. So congratulations. Okay. We'll be in touch as well.
Cool. Okay.
And then we've got a coffee draw. So
we got a coffee draw.
Get that organized right now. So that's a 5-pack we're going to do, right?
We're going to do a 5-pack. And I just got home. I left the day after the podcast last week. So I have to ship out the last winner's 5-pack. So I'm going to do all this tomorrow.
Okay.
Our buddy Matt Ward is our partner. Matt's company and his partner have this company called This Is Coffee. I'm sure everybody's, if you haven't tried it, you need to try it. It's the best backcountry coffee out there. And it's Spike Camp's partner for coffee. We're super happy to have him on board. And Wardo killed a stomper of a ram, stone ram, his first sheep. It's all over socials. We'll see if we can find that too. He's a pretty busy guy. I want to get him on here after hunting season to unpack that story. Couldn't have happened to a nicer guy. We're super happy, super proud of him. So.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just drawing everyone that's on the chat in the show right now. I'm just doing, I see 46 people. So I just did a random number between everyone here. And that is number 28. So in my list, I see Brock Hildebrand as our coffee winner. So Brock, congrats. You're on the call here right now. So we'll get your address and ship that your way too.
Awesome. Congratulations, everybody. What else do we have on our list?
I guess just the rifle, right?
The rifle. We need to talk about that rifle. Yeah. So this is the last few days. We're going to draw that probably, I don't know what day, but it'll be the end of the week here, August 31st. Just the rifle. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Just that little rifle. So yeah, that rifle, it's sitting in my safe. I'm going to have to spend an hour just wiping the drool off that thing because I've had it out of the safe like 50 times. Donnie had it to the range with some factory ammo. I've got the target. It shoots, from what I can see, shoots really well. He just took it out to the range to sight it in. How do you get in on the draw for the rifle? Well, Blake, you want to
Great
walk them
question.
through how it works on the platform, and then I'll tell them how it works to get some real entries too.
Yeah, I'm just putting the link in the chat for anyone that hasn't seen it. Most of you obviously have. There's two ways to enter. One is you just be active on Spike Camp and you get entries into the draw. So, you're in the live show right now. You guys are all collecting points. If you like posts, if you comment on posts, if you make posts, if you refer friends to Spike Camp and they sign up and say that you referred them, those are all ways you earn points into the draw. The best way to do it, though, for the most points is to donate money to conservation. So we have 3 partner groups that we've partnered with for this. It's the Wild Sheep Society BC, Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta, and Rocky Mountain Goat Alliance. Every dollar you donate to any of those 3 groups is 2 points, 2 entries into the draw. So it has to be either a monetary donation or a membership, whether you buy a lifetime, whether you buy 1 year. So for example, I think some of them are like 50,
Upgrade.
$60. Yeah, upgrade your membership, renew it, whatever you want to do. $60 is 120 entries into our draw. So it's a great way to up your odds. Lots of people have done it. It's been super cool to see. Thank you everybody that's donated the money. I think I got to calculate and do the leaderboard tomorrow, but I think we're around $13,000 raised, which is pretty incredible. And that's direct to conservation groups. So that's all of you donating, that's exciting. I mean, that keeps us doing this stuff. So thank you, everyone. So if you do donate, just email me or message me on Spike Camp so that I can see the proof and record it. That's the trick. And it is closing, so you have till the end of the month, midnight, August 31st. You got to get everything done by then.
Yeah, that'll be the cutoff. And this is our first. Well, I wouldn't say it's our first, but it's we're learning as we go with the platform and with the the giveaways, dealing with the vendors, dealing with the donors. This is a private. It should be mentioned, and it has been. This is a private donation from our good friend Don Lynham. He's just so generous, and he believes in conservation, and he believes in the community. He loves Spike Camp. He's all about the initiative and the mission that we have, and we're just super happy to to have him as a friend. Thanks everybody for tuning in for the Elk Camps. We really appreciate it, and we'll everybody be safe out there. Watch out for grizzly bears. That's all I got, man. Anything else, Blake?
No, we're good. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate everyone tuning in to the live streams. It's a lot of fun. We get all these people together. So, good luck for those who are going out elk hunting. Post your pics and your stories.
Oh, yeah. We got new spaces, too. We added 3, the bird hunting, fishing, and trapping. So if you've got something you want to throw up in those spaces, go for it. Thanks, everybody. Talk to you soon.